All I got now is strength. But maybe if I keep singing...
She was electric, unexpected, and impossible to forget. Janis Joplin did more than just sing. The blues, on stage, she bled them. But there was someone behind the gravelly voice and whiskey-soaked smile. A mess that not even her fans saw coming. When the news came out that she had died at age 27, everyone thought it was just another rock tragedy. What about the official autopsy? It said something much scarier in its whisper. A hotel room by itself. One last phone call. An absent mark that didn't answer all of my questions. We are going to talk about the strange in this movie. There are some shady facts hidden in Joplin's autopsy report. Myths have buried them for a long time. The story is not what it seems, and it starts here. The place of death. Janis Joplin was found dead in room 105 at the Landmark Motor Hotel in Hollywood early on October 4, 1970. United States. Her road manager found out about it because he was worried when she didn't show up for a recording session that she had planned. He came across a scene that Joplin's body was found face down on the floor next to her bed, with no obvious signs of violence. She is said to haunt the music world. Her death put a sudden end to one of rock's the most powerful and honest views. There were few but clear signs in the room itself. Specifics. Everyday things like loose change and a new pack of smokes were lying around near her. And her room key. These pointed to the fact that she had just come back from a short trip. To the cash machine in the front lobby of the hotel. It was a simple task that kept giving the disaster was a chilling normalcy. She hadn't thought the night would end with death. Her bag and makeup was found on the table, which shows she wasn't acting crazy before she died. Even though heroin-related items were later found at the scene, there were no signs of a fight, a break-in, or any injuries. No one had touched the bed. The room did not look like it was very tense or violent. Here are some hints that helped the doctor to think that the overdose most likely took place alone and in private. Giving support to the sad idea that one of music's bravest artists had died alone. What's so creepy about this place is how different it is from how people usually think of Joplin. On stage, she was a woman whose pain seemed to come out of her every time she spoke. Take note. She was quiet when she died. The fact that hotel room was empty told a different story, one of quiet, which may have been long-lasting behind her wails and the bright lights the light from the spotlight. Room 105 would be an important part of rock history, not just that's where Janis Joplin died, but also where an age lost one of its most powerful voices. But the lab results told a different story, one that made her last dose much more important. Disturbing than anyone thought at first. Findings in toxicology. The official autopsy report proved what many people already thought: Janis Joplin died of an overdose of heroin. Even though she was known for loving Southern Comfort whiskey, tests showed that she only had alcohol and heroin in her system, not barbiturates. It was found that stimulants or other drugs used for fun were present. When the two substances are mixed together, both drugs that slow down the central nervous system were deadly. But it wasn't just being there. It wasn't the amount of heroin that made people worry, it was how strong the drug was that made it seem especially dangerous. Los Angeles News reports from that week said that a very strong batch of heroin was going around among area users. Investigators tried to guess how pure the heroin in Joplin was. It used to be between 40% and 50%, which was a lot higher than the normal on the street at the time. Which was often cut down to less than 10%. This product, which was too pure, caught many abusers. Even longtime users like Joplin are caught off guard. Just a few days after she died, several other overdoses were reported in the same area, which highly suggests that Joplin was not the only person who died in that group. Heroin-related items were found in room 105. That had a needle, a spoon with residue on it, and other things that are common in new use of drugs. The medical examiner's finding that she died by accident was supported by these new facts. Not having any other drugs, since Joplin was known for multi-drug use, made it seem like she might have only meant to use heroin for fun that evening, but not fatally. There were no signs that she had taken her own life letter or planned to do so before. To hurt herself, which supports the idea that she was wrong about how strong the drug was. After the event, people were curious not only about Joplin's choices, but also about who she was. They gave her the heroin. Friends and people who knew her well wondered if a well-known supplier had sold her the batch without telling her how strong it was. While no one was ever legal charges in connection with her death, the very strong heroin that week cast over Los Angeles's nightlife and brought up bigger issues of duty in backstreet channels of distribution. In Joplin's case, it was too late to fix one dose of the wrong drug, bringing attention to the fact that even the most experienced drug users can die from random drug use. Needle mark controversy. Right after Janis Joplin's death, early reports from first responders mentioned a strange fact: there were no quickly she has clear needle marks on her body. For someone who most people think uses drugs often, some people thought that absence was odd. It led to early rumors that either she hadn't been a regular give her an injection or that someone was trying to hide how she died. The absence of the official finding of a heroin overdose did not match up with the locations of visible injection sites. There were doubts about whether the scene had been changed before the police came. Reports from people in her group that a friend might have entered added to the puzzle. The room before the emergency services were called. It was said in some reports that this person would have moved or taken away drug tools, maybe in the hopes of keeping Joplin's image unharmed or to avoid being charged with a crime. Even though no charges were ever brought, even though the stories were never officially proven, they became part of music history. Added a twist to a situation that was already sad. That she might have cleaned up her death or tried to hide what happened in room 105 made people even more interested in what really happened there. When the coroner's report was finished, it showed that there were faint needle punctures that rescue workers did not notice right away. These holes, however, did not keep up with the heavy scarring that long-term drug users normally have. This another mystery was made by the difference. If Joplin had been regularly shooting heroin, so why were the signs of a shot so small? One reason was that she had started very briefly to use heroin again at the time of her death, after being clean for a short time. Explain why her tolerance level has gone down and there are no physical signs that she regularly uses. There are still stories decades later because there aren't any clear answers. Even though the autopsy overdose was confirmed as the cause of death, along with details about how, when, and by whom the person died, it is still not clear how the heroin was injected or if anyone did anything later. In a life as shocking and uncut as Janis Joplin's death was, the small holes in the story let there is room for doubt, theory, and myth. Finally, the debate about the needle mark was over. Echoes not only the mystery of her death but also the complexity of her rough and unappreciated life. The medical records also raised questions about how pure and strong the heroin Joplin used was, and was said to be a lot stronger than what was normally available at the time. A number of deaths were reported in the same area that weekend, which could mean that a lot that was very strong had been going around. This added another level of difficulty to describe her death, including how it happened and what she took that would have killed her. Set up. It was limited because even a small amount could kill someone with a low tolerance. Tragedy down, showing that just one moment of back use in the wrong situation could be fatal. The party provision just 2 days before she died too soon, Janis Joplin changed her will in a very noticeable way. In what many people have since seen as a hauntingly prescient move, she set aside $2,500 for a party to remember her after she died. It wasn't a proper funeral or memorial service, she planned a party for her friends to enjoy after she was gone. The clause said the money should be used for a party that lasts all night. People in her inner group could get blasted in her name. From a woman known for living, the request was made out loud and without apologizing. It was out of character for the person and came at a very bad time. As asked, the party took place at the Lion's Share in San Anselmo, California. It was a bar where Joplin liked to hang out. About 200 of her friends, co-workers, and other artists got together to dance, party, and listen to music. The party, paid for fully by the amount she had set aside, was full of stories, laughter, and tears, making it hard to see that there is a line between honor and a last act of rebellion. There was no funeral like most people do. For Joplin, for the performer who lived a hard life and didn't show much feeling, this was the only nice way to say goodbye. Some people think the party clause is a sick joke from someone who has played with death for years. Others, though, see it as a deeply personal statement of how she wants to be regarded, not as a tragic figure but as someone who brought people together through music and spirit. Because she made the change so close to her death, some people think she may have felt like the end was coming. No matter if it was intuition or chance, the addition of such a clause so soon before she died shows that she was aware of how fragile she was. The phrase is often used today in bios and retrospectives as one of the clearest views into Joplin's mind. This shows how funny she is, her desire for contact and her dislike of social rules, even when she was dead. People know about the wake she planned herself because of what it says and how it was held. For its scary insight. In a world that often made her look like a cartoon version of chaos, the party order in her will showed that she was sure of how she wanted to be buried. Would like to be remembered not in sadness but with music, madness, and one last toast. First-hand accounts. In the hours after Janis Joplin died, the people who knew her best started to put together her final timeline, but they quickly ran into problems. She was met at the recording studio by her friends and producer in the morning of October 4th, where she was supposed to record lyrics for the song Buried Alive in the Blues. When she failed to show up without warning, danger bells went off right away. It was nothing like them at all. For Joplin, who took her music seriously even though she was known for being crazy. In her absence, she told her road manager to check out the Landmark Motor Hotel, which is where he found the terrible news. In the last few days of her life, she had a lot of meetings that gave people different ideas about how she was feeling. Some friends said she looked lively and happy, thrilled about her continued sessions for her first album by herself, Pearl. She seemed to have talked about future projects and seemed happy about her recent success. Others remembered a very different Janis. She was alone, being alone and possibly mentally spent. The source has been these two different versions. A lot of talk for decades about whether she was mentally weak or just caught off guard by a very high dose of heroin. The last person known to have talked to Joplin, John Cook, who was her road manager, got a call from her late that same night, October 3rd. In his opinion, she sounded fine, nothing about her voice or words showed that she was upset or action that is not normal. She was said to have said that she would smoke cigarettes and go back to her room after that. That conversation, which seemed regular at the time, is now just a cold last detail. She might not have known that she was about to die from an overdose in just a few hours. That there is no panicked behavior, no missed calls, and no outward signs of being upset about her death. This makes her death seem even more sudden and fake. All of these different stories and timelines uncertainties keep making people wonder what really happened in Joplin's last hours. Was she just a victim of a lot of drugs that killed her at the wrong time, or was there something else going on? Going on below the surface, whether it's mental or not. Witness accounts that don't match up show how hard it was to understand someone like Joplin, whose life was always sliding between seconds of pure happiness and crushing sadness. In the end, her death left a hole in more places than just the studio, but would remain a mystery to those who knew her best. But while those closest to her gave her mixed, Janis herself, on national TV, may have given the best picture of her memories. Signs of what she was really going through. Honest last interviews. Janis Joplin's last public talks give a scary look into the problems she was having with herself. Faced the hard times she went through as a star. To be exact, her most recent performance on the Dick Cavett Show has become an important part of music history. Even though she looked lively, funny, as she joked around with Cavett and the studio crowd, she was quick-witted and charming. There was a clear hint of tiredness in her mood. Cavett, a friend and a good speaker, she made fun of her looks and fame in a subtle way, and Joplin smiled and said flashes of being weak. She was honest about the loneliness that came with being famous and how, even though she was always surrounded by fans and musicians, she often felt alone mentally. The most important thing about what she said was how angry she was with how people saw her. Joplin had she built a business on pure emotion, but she learned that people cared about her. More about how she looks than how well she plays. The picture of the free made her feel trapped. Rock star who drank too much and couldn't be controlled, an image she helped create in some ways but also that would come to take over her music. During the talks I did with her, she complained about being criticized and how reviewers liked to ignore how good she was at singing and how deep her lyrics were. To talk about how she lived her life and put on shows. It was something she had seen many times. Often, a desire to be seen and understood, not just seen. Joplin longed for people to notice her work, and not just a display of her pain. Now that we look back, these talks have meaning that was deeper and more sad. Since then, biographers and culture observers have referred back to times in her last media interviews when hints of stress were quietly visible, nervous there was laughter, sudden changes in tone, and short moments of sadness. Behind all the noise, there was someone who was very aware of how emotionally weak she was. Being honest, people used to get excited about being openly rebellious, but now they tend to see it as a hidden way to ask for help. The things about her that made her interesting, her passion, volatility, and her desire to be seen could have also been signs of deeper, more hidden pain. Lastly, these conversations are very different from the lies that have been spread about her since then. They show Joplin not as a mythical figure, but as a woman who is trying to keep her public life in check. Adoration with a hole inside. Her charm hid a complicated inner life that she tried to hide. To describe with rising desperation as her last days approached. These on-camera scenes showed some of the only times she seemed to let down her guard in a big way, giving a real picture of someone who is having a hard time with their identity, their memory, and the limits of what fame can really do for them. For many fans and researchers, these conversations are more than just old records. Sad memories of what a legend lost, ignored, or just didn't get right in their life. Biopic challenges. The long-term attempt to make Janis Joplin's bringing life to the big screen has been one of the most difficult and controversial things in Hollywood. Journeys in biopics. The current movie has Shailene Woodley, an actress, set to play the legendary singer, has made people both excited and skeptical again. Even though the movie has funds through the California Film Commission and began pre-production with a budget of $10 million. Its creative path is still unknown. The biggest problem is with the Joplin estate, which says she has a lot of power over the song rights. Without her permission to use her own songs, filmmakers have a hard time showing Joplin's life without access to her letters, voice recordings, her voice, which made her famous in the first place. This problem has been around for a while. A number of earlier efforts to make a biopic about Janis Joplin have failed because of legal issues, anxiety, or a lack of ideas. In 2015, a legal case was one of the most well-known fails. Silver Reel Partners and LKL Productions got into a fight over who owned the rights to the script. Get it while you still can. The suit said there was a breach of contract and meddling with intellectual property. That project was pushed to the back burner just as it looked like it was getting up speed. It has been said that there are other versions with women like Amy Adams, Zooey Deschanel, and Pink over the years, but they never happened because of disagreements over rights or lack of money, or disagreements about art with the Joplin estate. The working team right now has the question is whether they can tell Janis Joplin's story honestly without the music that made her history. Getting her songs not only adds emotional and historical depth, but also determines how deeply people will connect with the movie. Joplin's voice, the sound she made wasn't her signature, it showed how hurt, angry, and open she was. If her family doesn't give the filmmakers full rights to her records, they may have to use cover versions or original songs written in her way, which could turn off fans and lower the trustworthiness of the movie as a biopic. There has been more talk about this case since it happened. How the houses of famous artists handle their gifts. Even though it makes sense to want to honor Janis Joplin's memory, some critics say that too much control can stop people from being creative. Honor her and limit how people in the future can connect with her life story. A good movie can bring Joplin back to the attention of a new generation and strengthen her place in culture history, but only if it stays true to the spirit of her art. What will happen with the Shailene Woodley project, right now, depends not only on how good the filmmakers are, but also on how well they keep the secret. There are talks going on that will decide if Janis Joplin's real voice can finally be used on TV. Disconnect between generations today, in this highly curated digital age, the raw, unprocessed way that Janis Joplin played and sang is very different from there are a lot of emotional and aesthetic standards among younger listeners. Growing up in a time when while stars get polished, auto-tuned, and help from whole branding teams, Gen Z viewers often find Joplin's rough singing, wild energy, and openness to feeling both shocking and hard to handle. Put into groups. Her music isn't as smooth or precise in its rhythms as most modern music charts. Instead, it lives on being unpredictable and showing raw emotion, traits that were once seen as negative. It was praised, but now it could be seen as not having enough technical skill or business appeal. In the 1960s, Joplin's honest performances were seen as very different from the norm. She showed how hurt she was, she wailed through pain and took on a stage personality that wasn't typically female, nor made to appeal to a wide audience. But seen through the lens of modern society, which has been shaped by on social media sites like Instagram and TikTok, where pictures are more important than words, that same weakness can also be seen as careless or even acting. Audiences today have been taught to look for clues in material that is filtered and moves quickly, so that it will be strange or uncomfortable to hear Joplin's unrestrained delivery.